This is Fountain
Every
Street
week I find
Church.
it hard to find the best ones, but somehow, like I said, you'll hear what I'm trying to say even when the words
Here,
are...
we strive to free the mind, grow the soul, and change the world. Here, there is freedom to doubt and freedom to believe. Here, you can find a house of prayer for all people.
The swallow up Jonah.
Welcome to Fountain Street Church. Join us on the journey.
That was itself almost an Advent reading because the first phrases, Ave Maria, Gratia Plena, are actually the Latin version of the first chapter of Luke when Gabriel comes to Mary and says, Hail Mary, which is Greek for hello. It's not very grand, actually. They use it in Greece to this day. Kaire, hail, how you doing? So thank you for that Advent reading, although there was a little extra text added in there too. Well, I'm here to ask us to make some penance because a lot of turkeys died for our sins this past week. The sin of overindulgence, if none other. There's still a bit of the carcass in my world, and we keep trying. And one of my sons already went to Chicago, so we're trying to pack up an awful lot to send back with my other son to college when he goes back today. I'm sure all of his friends will be showing up with turkey sandwiches as well. I talk about transubstantiation. Just imagine, it comes out of the oven and suddenly it's on tables everywhere. Abundance was the point, of course, to celebrate it, that we are blessed and that we are extremely fortunate at this time, in this place, in the world's history. But I have to say what struck me was how much more, not only turkey, but everything else we have than we actually really need. I'm struck by how much stuff there is in my life. I know there's a lot of stuff because I keep tripping over it. And it does provoke in me some uncomfortable thoughts on the moral peril of wealth, but I won't spoil your Advent around that. Our pagan hearts long ago overcame the austere original notion of Advent, when the season was meant to remind us of our doom, not of our grandeur. The original themes of Advent, by the way, long before Duncan Little Fair and Fountain Street Church, were, let me make sure I get them right, death, judgment, heaven, and hell. They sound like merry notions all by themselves, don't they? Something in us needs to display and delight at this season, no matter what anyone else says. It's older than the angels, it's older than the shepherds, it's older even, I think, than greens and goodies. A deep, nameless urge in us needs to be merry. And it will not be extinguished, and I do not deny it, but I will hope to ask of it in this season some deep questions, the sort that beget the confusion of shepherds and the wanderings of magi. At least I hope so, because if a sermon does not take you into a place you have not been before, at some point it has not done its duty. And so therefore I say, as I do every week, may these words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, O thou who art my rock and my redeemer. Because there's no guarantee I will succeed. All fall for those who are regulars. You have been listening to stories about shelter, or actually the lack of shelter in the world. At least in history, we've talked about Israel in the wilderness, how they spent 40 years trying to find their way across 200 miles of desert. Not very good sense of direction, but a great story. And for the last few weeks, and this week as well, I'm mentioning the 7 fires prophecy of the Anishinaabe Indians, those large group that migrated from the East Coast to the Great Lakes over 1,000 years ago. And then as we turn the corner now into Advent, those two stories bump up against the third one, of which you heard a fragment this morning, the story of Joseph and Mary as they travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And it, like the other two, is a story about which we know no facts, but it is a powerful story. And in fact, the story is so powerful that in Mexican culture, it is the custom to reenact it, and people go from house to house every night between the 16th and the 24th of December, pretending to be Mary and Joseph, crowds with candles, and they sing a song of entry, and they are turned away 1, 2, 3 times until a family designated by the community welcomes them in and feeds them all. It's called the posadas, which is the Spanish word for inn, a place where one can get rest. And so we have three stories. People, a nation wandering in the desert between slavery and home. Indians, natives, wandering westward, looking for the right place that they hoped to live out their days. And now Mary and Joseph wandering through ancient Palestine, looking for a place as refuge as her child comes into the world. I think homelessness is a compelling theme in these stories because we revere home, especially around the holidays. Thanksgiving is about going home. Otherwise, why would we drive all those miles and get on all those airplanes and make all that food? We want people to be at home. And of course, anyone who's ever been married or been an adult with both children and parents, you're torn between where you should go on Thanksgiving, to your parents, or maybe your spouse's parents, or maybe you should have them here, or maybe with your brother and sister. It makes no difference. The sense of needing to be home is very powerful at Thanksgiving. Likewise at Christmas. There's no place like home for the holidays, like it says. And all those songs and stories about Santa Claus somehow involve a chimney and a hearth, and if you're not there, where are you going to be when the guy goes by and you're not there? How many children have anxiously asked a parent as they went off to celebrate Christmas with grandpa or grandma, well, how will Santa find us when we're not at home? There's a deep question, I think, in these two strong images of being homeless and at home. From a spiritual and an emotional vantage, the question hinges on the reality that the stories we learn the most from are stories of homelessness and wandering. Those are the ones that make us pay attention. As I think Tolstoy said, happy families are the least interesting. Nothing happens to them. The homeless are always interesting. They encounter adventures. Well, let's remember that Moses, that great prophet, was nobody. He was just an Egyptian prince, a spoiled Egyptian prince, until he killed someone and was a fugitive and became homeless. Jesus did not arrive in his hometown at all. Bethlehem was only where his ancestors came from. And of course, after they were in Bethlehem, the story says that Herod came after him. So where did they go? Not back to Nazareth. They went into Egypt. They became refugees. And those who know the story of Muhammad know that as he preached his message in Mecca, he was driven out, literally driven homeless away from Mecca, where he had to go and hide for a number of years until he could come back in conquest and in glory. Our greatest religious founders and leaders have been homeless. They wander around like the Buddha goes from place to place. None of our great leaders, spiritual leaders, belong to a particular spot. They're always on the move. They are essentially homeless. So what's going on in this love of home and this power of the homelessness? I think it's the difference, at least in part, between being safe and sound and belonging. They are not the same thing. Now, home really is a safe place. As I said in the early service, I think it was Carl Sandburg or maybe Robert Frost who wrote that home is the place that when you knock, they have to let you in.